All right, y'all, got to talk about this one. Got to talk about this fight, Joselyne Edwards versus Chelsea Chandler. Man, first of all, there's a couple of things in this one. Number one, I didn't see Joselyne Edwards getting her first stoppage, let alone against Chelsea Chandler. I thought this was going to be another fight where, if she did win, it was just going to be her technical style, just trying to build up points on Chelsea Chandler. But seeing her come in there and score her very first stoppage in the UFC, that was crazy. That was crazy. I mean, when it came down to it, I was looking at experience. I said, Joselyne Edwards definitely has the experience, more activity. But I was kind of looking at Chelsea Chandler's style. Like, if Chelsea is big and strong in this fight, she would probably try to get it to the ground and just do what some of the other fighters did, just lay and prey on Joselyne Edwards. But, man, like, Joselyne, she re-upped the game in this one for herself. This is what I've been saying. Like, before Joselyne Edwards, she needs to be more aggressive and put more pressure on these fighters and just stop sitting back. And in this fight, she came up with a good game plan of just breaking down Chelsea Chandler in the first round, even using her own takedown, and just overall just overpowering Chelsea Chandler throughout this fight. Chelsea, on the other hand, like I always said, look, Chelsea, she's tough. I think she has some good technical skills, but sometimes she just gets drawn into that, that toe-to-toe fight. She wants to go in there and trade, and that's not good. I mean, if you want to build your skills up and you want to make it to the top, you got to go in there and use your skills. I mean, Chelsea's a southpaw too, and I saw her use the left hand effectively in this fight, but she's got to be more mindful. She's got to be more mindful and protect her chin in the fight. But real quick, let's just go back and look at the first round. I mean, the only round right away, Joselyne Edwards, I like how she was attacking the lead leg. She was facing the southpaw. She stayed on the outside, but she was just constantly smacking that lead leg of Chelsea Chandler. And where Chelsea Chandler was failing was she was just taking the kicks. She was taking the kicks, or she was stepping straight back. You never step straight back, against a good, solid technical striker. She was just stepping straight back, and she wasn't really checking these kicks. So while she's taking these kicks, Joselyne Edwards, she's alternating. She's going hard to the body, just like Yana Santos did. She was going hard to that body because it's wide open, So another thing, Chelsea needs to drop that elbow and block some of these kicks. And like I said, step out at an angle to avoid these kicks that are coming. So Edwards, she's just constantly going to the body. So Chelsea Chandler, she initiates that takedown, which is I figure she's going to go. But then Joselyne Edwards, I got to give her credit here. She's been working. She got the trip in the takedown here and used that takedown just to kind of put her strength on Chelsea. But eventually got the fight back to the feet, which is what I knew she was going to do. And as soon as she got back to the feet, she started working hard on the body kicks again. And Chelsea just trying to land a few of those left hands, which she did. Like I said, she's got a good straight left hand, but still not using that angle or using that jab. So when she's just using that straight left hand, Edwards, she's still going to the body and landing her own right hands. And, she's not missing. So eventually, finally, Edwards decides to let it go. She finally decides to do what she needed to do in the past and let a barrage go. And as she backed Chelsea up, she caught her clean with her left hand and dropped Chelsea. And before she could land her like another big barrage, the ref, he went on and stopped it because, she was kind of folded up anyway. So, yeah, man, Joselyne Edwards finally stepped her game up. But this is one of the things, I've been seeing from Chelsea Chandler in the past, now carrying over into the UFC. I just need to see her be a little bit more technical with her striking and fighting behind the jab. She's got to, throw that long jab out and, step side to side and not try to go into these toe-to-toe matches because, Joselyne Edwards, she's not really known as a puncher, but if you let somebody back you up and they're putting all that force into these shots like Edwards was doing, Joselyne Edwards, she was coming forward and, she let that left hand go, it'll drop you, so that's just something that Chandler needs to work on. But Joselyne Edwards, yeah, I mean, this is where she needed to be in the first place as far as like being more aggressive. Like this is why she's been kind of failing in the past. But I like the fact that she was putting more pressure on and just letting her kicks go from the leg to the body. But as for Chelsea Chandler, man, she's 2-3 now in the UFC, and I don't know if it was a weight issue again because just looking at her eyes, I don't know if that weight cut was kind of rough on her. I think that she needs to either leave the UFC for now because if the weight cut's going to be rough on her, the fights are still going to be rough. I think that she needs to go back to Invicta, just to be honest, to go back to Invicta and, get some work in, either as a featherweight there or, just work as a bantamweight over there too, because that way, the skill level balances out and she can still kind of work on, making that lifestyle of a bantamweight if she can do that, but until then, you can make fights as a featherweight there because, at 2-3 now, and losing against somebody like Joselyne Edwards, I see some of these other strikers like Cavalcanti, Even who else we got? Well, Cavalcanti is one of the big ones. Even like Ketlin Vieira, and even like an improving Eileen Perez, Nora Cornell. Just the variety of girls you got here that have power in both hands. I think that those will still be some tough fights for her, especially if you having trouble making weight. So that's just being honest. I like Chelsea. I like the fact that she likes to go in there and fight. But as time goes on, you got to be more mindful with those technical skills, especially when you're a southpaw and you got a good straight left hand and, you got good boxing. I've seen her in the past, have good boxing and land those punches. She got to be more defensively sound. That's what I'm saying. Like fighters like Manon, southpaws like them, that like to go in there and use that right hook and stay out of the way of danger and, pick up a win. You can't just always go in there and go toe to toe. As for Joselyne Edwards, I think she still needs some more work. I need to see her fight her way up. Maybe fight somebody like the winner of Yana Santos versus Miesha Tate just to see where she's at. Still fight these lower level bantamweights because, like I said, she has her days where she's up and down too. One day she'll beat a Tamiris Vidal or Chelsea Chandler, then she'll go in there and lose to Eileen Perez. So I just need to see a little bit more from Joselyne Edwards as well. I'd like to see her fight that winner or loser of Miesha Tate versus Yana Santos. But yeah, that's all I got on this one, guys. Let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Who's next for Edwards? What do y'all think for Chelsea Chandler? If they do cut her now, I think it'll be a blessing for her to go back to Invicta FC and get that work in over there, or fight some of the more of these lower level bantamweight fighters and see what she can do from there. But let me know in the comment section, guys. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Subscribe. Peace.